Mark Twain was one of the greatest minds in America's past, and I believe he deserves to be celebrated even perhaps more than he has been. His literature is great. Not everything he said about God is spot on, perhaps, but maybe we'll give him a slight pass in this life, not in the afterlife, for that, because a lot of the things he said outside of that were great. One of his wittiest and best aphorisms, in my opinion, is this one, where he said, "It is not what you don't know that will get you into trouble. It is what you think you know that just ain't so." So what we think we know, the default narratives that we've believed, are the things that will get us into trouble, and that's why it's so important that I think this show and independent thinking exist. When I say independent thinking, let me be really clear. I don't mean thinking in a vacuum. That never happens. We need to allow different voices and different ideas, but we need to not be told what to think about those things when those ideas come. We need to let reason, we need to let logic, and we even need to let faith speak into all of these issues so that they can help us develop a well-rounded understanding of the world around us. And ultimately, my hope is that people will watch this show, realize that Christianity does that best. But even if you come away with a different conclusion than that, it's my hope that you will understand that critical thinking and developing a robust worldview is the only cure for deceptive lies in our society. And one of the ways in which those lies come, and I have to be honest about this, too infrequently on the right, is in the form of conspiracy theories. Now, these range the gamut of the totally preposterous to the actual, like, these things were conspiracy theories now, and now they're just facts. And perhaps they were more at the time than we even wanted to give them credit, but they kind of defied the common narrative, and as a result of that, we were far too quick to kind of push it away. Now, obviously, I spoke at the beginning of the show about this and decried that kind of thinking. However, I think that to jump to conspiracy theories is an actual big problem, and it discredits our thinking. Now, I want to give you an example of this as it pertains to what just took place in Israel, because Jason Whitlock and Ben Shapiro have kind of been having a back and forth spat a little bit about Jason Whitlock's views of what took place in Israel. You can see that clip here.
His show had some comments about me and Tucker Carlson and our disagreements about the way people are reacting, responding, very emotionally, very hyperbolic to the events in Israel involving Hamas and Palestine and Iran and all that. Let's play the clip of Ben Shapiro addressing me.
Jason Whitlock, for some odd reason, who, again, I like Jason. I know Jason. I like a lot of his work. Jason has decided that it's important to sound off to me generally and say, well, you know what? You have to understand why people are not so exercised about babies being killed in their beds, in their room. I mean, after all, there have been a lot of conspiracy theories out there. Yeah, I know. What's the conspiracy theory to which you're referring right now that people should give credence? What is it? Seriously, like, spell it out for me. I'd like you to spell it out. What is the conspiracy theory that leads people to somehow draw a morally ambiguous line here? Explain it to me in short words.
Well, I actually can't say from here that Hamas is the face of evil. I can't. I can take your word for it, but I can't say it from here. I can say what Hamas did is an atrocity and evil and wicked. Who the face of evil is, I don't know. And I'm going to slow it down. And I do. Ben talks real fast. I tend to talk real slow. I'm going to slow it down even more so that perhaps Ben and others can understand, because I'm getting emails. I'm getting all kinds of comments over Twitter. It's like no one's understanding my point. And so I'm going to say this very slowly, in small words, hopefully. I don't know a lot of big words. I believe, and everybody I know believes, that Hamas committed an atrocity against Israel. No one is in denial of that. And how the conspiracy plays into this, though, is that atrocities happen. JFK getting shot in broad daylight in Dallas in 1963. That was an atrocity. That happened. There is a conspiracy in many people's minds, and I believe in rational people's mind, about why it happened, who was involved, who allowed it to happen.
So people are responding hyperbolically to what took place in Israel. Well, are they? Shouldn't they respond emotionally to what took place in Israel, the way Hamas invaded them and the things that they did to them? I mean, I understand why somebody might think that that's an adequate response to what took place there. Now, what I am not saying is that we become morally benighted as a result of our emotional take on what took place in Israel. But to say that there are people responding hyperbolically about all this, and ultimately then to make the suggestion, let's just be honest, this is exactly what Jason Whitlock is saying. Ben was kind enough to say, what conspiracy are you saying exactly? Because he wants Whitlock to say it. Whitlock doesn't have to say it. We hear what he's saying. He doubts whether or not Israel was actually legitimately invaded by Hamas. He's literally saying one of two things. One, Hamas was allowed to do it because Israel wanted them to kill all of those people so that they could start a war. Or two, Israel did it to themselves. So in other words, he is spouting a conspiracy theory, and the most annoying kind of conspiracy theory, one that has absolutely no evidence to back it up. So conspiracy theories are fine when we're talking about things that are rational, and we'll get to this in a moment, and have the kind of evidence needed to back those theories up. To just go out there and suggest, for instance, that the earth is flat with all evidence to the contrary, sure, you can suggest it, and then you can show these interesting facts around how the earth may be flat. Like, what about waterfalls? How did that happen? I mean, you can suggest whatever you want to simple minds to try to justify it, but again, the evidence has to back up the claim, right? So if we're going to not fall for default theories, like the left wants us to, then it's important for us to understand that the ideas that are purported must have evidence to back them up. That should be simple enough. But unfortunately, too many people on the right are willing to suggest something like Israel attacked themselves or let Hamas do it because they just wanted to start a war. So Israel is so bloodthirsty to start a war with Palestine that they were willing to let men, women, and children be raped. Now, I get it. The idea here is, how in the world did the most technologically advanced military and the Middle East, perhaps, I think that's arguable, but perhaps, how did they let this happen without any repercussions? Why were so many civilians killed? The idea, I suppose, is something like this: don't get distracted. We hear it all the time from conservatives. By the way, let me try to help you with this, because we heard this with the Chinese spy balloon. When Britney Spears dances around in her underwear like a maniac with knives, that's a distraction. Who Justin Bieber is dating, that's a distraction. Who Taylor Swift is dating, who the hell cares? That's a distraction. When a Chinese spy balloon traverses the United States, that's not a distraction. That's not the US government allowing that to happen so that we'll focus on that and then miss what's happening down below. That Chinese spy balloon was actually something that you should have been paying attention to, because they were spying on us, thus the spy balloon part. So the idea here is that it becomes morally contemptible when these kind of conspiracy theories cloud your vision from the bigger picture here. The idea that a Chinese spy balloon traversing through the United States is odd but not that important is ridiculous, in the same way that spouting that what took place in Israel is potentially doesn't sit right with us. Like, okay, so let me frame this a different way for you. So when that Chinese spy balloon came across the United States, if you were a thoughtful person, you'd be asking, the most technologically advanced military in the history of the world is in the United States. How are we letting this balloon traverse the whole United States from China all the way here, all the way through our country, and then shot in the eastern seaboard? How did that happen? So we could have espoused a billion different theories, conspiracy theories, as to why that took place. The fact that it did still remains. Now, the same thing is being done with Israel. How did this happen? Well, I think it would be pretty easy to logically kind of piece this together. Joe Biden gives, or promises at least, $6 billion to Iran. Hezbollah is in Iran. Hezbollah finances and backs Hamas. So there's potentially kind of a financial outlet there for an attack to take place. And actually, Hamas isn't just a bunch of sheep herders in the desert. They're actually backed up financially and have billions of dollars and obviously sophisticated military equipment. So they were able to bombard and surprise attack mostly civilians. Kind of makes sense, doesn't it? The same way that we allowed a spy balloon to enter our country is the same way that these Hamas terrorists entered the country of Israel. And all of this to say this: if we allow all of these conspiracy theories to take our attention away from the humanitarian atrocity of what took place in Israel, and we spend our time pontificating about these stupid things that don't really have the evidence to back up the claim, then ultimately we are doing something that is morally contemptible and something that that we should be aware of. Inserting conspiracy theories at a time like this without the evidence to do so seems that you're less interested in what actually took place and less interested in actually being a real thinker than you are in just drawing attention to a fringe group of people out there. So suffice to say, I guess I can see why conservatives so often get so little accomplished. At a time like this, when we should be galvanized behind Israel as an ally of ours, and we should be interested in, and I'll get to this in just a moment, interested in what kind of threat Hamas poses to us from a national security standpoint, we are busy navel gazing and looking at flat earth style conspiracy theories. So yeah, again, no wonder why we don't get many things accomplished. And so to try to help any of you conservatives who watch my show and are prone to conspiracy theories, I just want to encourage you to do this. You have to question yourself, and you need to make this an intellectual exercise with everything. When you assert something that you believe to be a fact, you have to make sure that you can prove it with either, because sometimes you don't have necessarily the kind of tangible empirical facts, but you need to be able to prove it with either some reasonable assumptions or something that would justify the claim that you make. You can't just make an assertion that might have happened without evidence and expect people to take you seriously. So in other words, if you're going to espouse a theory about something, the theory should have either facts or reasonable assumption to back up the theory. Otherwise, it is not worth the time that you're taking to espouse the theory.
So you just got done watching a small excerpt of a much larger episode. You can find the link to that full episode down below in the description of this video. So you definitely want to check that out, because if you like that clip, you'll like the much larger episode. And while you're at it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and click that little bell to be notified when great new episodes of Indie Thinker come your way. Thanks for watching.